Hello and welcome to lecture 4 of BCC. In the last video we talked about the gas laws and its application, and there were 3 lectures on that. And today we are going to discuss about atomic mass and molecular mass in this program. And you already know about atomic mass and molecular mass from your lower level classes. That atomic mass, according to the latest carbon standard, is the mass of one atom of an element divided by 1/12 of the mass of one carbon atom. That means carbon 12, carbon not carbon. You have to mention which carbon. Carbon 12. Carbon 12. That is the isotope. So 1/12 of the mass of one carbon 12 atom. So that is the latest standard. Earlier there were hydrogen standard, oxygen standards. They were abandoned, and ultimately from 1961 universally we are following the carbon standard, where all the elements, their atoms, are compared with 1/12 part of one atom of carbon 12, and that is one unit that is called the carbon unit, Cu, or it is called unified atomic mass unit, or simply U, or the biochemists that call it Dalton, Da. So carbon has the atomic mass exactly a whole number, 12 point, all zeros of the world, exactly 12. And all others are having fractional atomic masses. They are not whole numbers. For example, hydrogen, 1.0078. We call it 1. That should be here. I'm so sorry. So eraser. It's not being erased. No problem. So it should be here. It should be here. It should be here. It has been shifted position. Don't mind. So we take it for our convenience. The atomic mass of hydrogen is 1 U. Earlier we were calling it AMU, atomic mass unit. Now it is simply U, unified atomic mass unit. Sometimes Dalton. And nitrogen is actually 14.007. We take it as 14. Sodium is 22.990, but we round off to the nearest whole number, 23. So also oxygen. So also fluorine. They are not whole numbers, they are fractional values, but we round off to the nearest whole number for 2 reasons. One, for easy calculation, for better calculation, and second, I'll tell you, just hold on for a moment. So mass number and atomic mass, how do they differ? You must know the difference very, very correctly. Mass number is the total number of protons and neutrons, as you know, present in the nucleus. It's always a whole number. But as we have already discussed, that atomic mass only for carbon standard, carbon 12, that is absolutely whole number, but all others are fractional values. It is relative mass with respect to 1/12 part of a carbon 12 atom taken as one unit, U, for comparison. It is not a whole number except that of carbon 12. Rounding off the atomic mass, or in fact isotopic atomic mass, we shall be looking at the isotopes, and every isotope of an element has a different atomic mass, and that is called isotopic atomic mass, or simply isotopic mass. So when the isotopic mass, for example, sodium is 22.99 something 0, when it is rounded off to the nearest whole number 23, that becomes the mass number. That becomes the number which is the sum of the number of neutrons and protons present in the nucleus. So when the isotopic mass, not the average atomic mass, but the isotopic atomic mass is rounded off to the nearest whole number, that becomes the mass number, right? Now let us talk about isotopes. You already know from your class 9 that isotopes are same elements but have different isotopic masses and different mass numbers. It is because they have different number of neutrons present in their nuclei. They are same elements, but they differ in their atomies, their nuclei. The lighter isotope has less number of neutrons, the heavier isotopes have greater number of neutrons, but the proton number is same because the element is same. So such species are called isotopes of a single element. And there are 21 elements in the periodic table, naturally occurring elements which are monoisotopics. And the rest are polyisotopic, exist in more than one stable isotopes. More than one isotopes. And out of 21 monoisotopic, 19 are stable and 2 are radioactive. But a single isotope, they do not have their average value. They have a single isotopic mass, and that is atomic mass. All the rest have more than one isotopes, and their isotopic atomic masses are averaged for chemical calculation. So these 21 elements are monoisotopic, and their isotopic masses are their atomic masses. For other elements, the average atomic masses are calculated basing on the relative abundances of these isotopes, and that average value is used for chemical calculations, right? And in fact, the atomic masses are truly called isotopic atomic masses or simply isotopic masses. And we already know that when isotopic masses are rounded off to the nearest whole number, we get the mass number. Now, let us acquaint ourselves with these 21 monoisotopic elements. Out of them, 19 are stable, means not radioactive. They do not emit any beta rays or beta particles or alpha rays, nothing. They are stable. And only one nature-made isotope. So these 19 stable monoisotopic elements are beryllium 9, fluorine 19, sodium 23, aluminium 27, phosphorus 31, manganese 55, cobalt 59, arsenic 75, iodine 127, cesium 133, gold 197, scandium 45, yttrium 89, niobium 93, rhodium 103, praseodymium 141, terbium 159, then this is holmium 165, this is thulium 169. Now out of these, the common ones for you in the beginner stage is up to this scandium, gold. These are the common monoisotopic stable isotopes, but these two are monoisotopic but unstable, they are radioactive. Bismuth was previously considered as a stable element, atomic number 83, but now it is considered as radioactive. And protactinium, that is itself radioactive, no doubt. It is coming after, uh, thorium. So after 83, all are radioactive. You will be knowing in your periodic classification program. But bismuth is truly not stable. But its half-life period, its life is so large, so high, so long that it is considered to be stable. And but in reality, it is radioactive, right? So all these 21 elements have their only one isotopic mass, and that is the atomic mass. But let me acquaint with you these 7 elements which have 2 isotopes, one stable and one radioactive. So their average atomic mass is determined. Of course, these belong to the remaining category. They do not belong to this 21 category. But I wanted to tell you that these 7 elements have only 2. One stable, one radioactive. Why I wanted to tell you? Because if somebody asks you how many stable monoisotopic elements, monoisotopic but stable, it will be 19 from this and 7 from this, 26. So these have their partners, radioactive partners, naturally occurring partners, but one stable isotope and these 19 monoisotopic stable isotope. So altogether there are 26 elements which have one stable isotope, only one stable isotope. But for these 7, you have to find out the average. But particularly indium and rhenium, the average will be highly different from the this stable value, because their radioactive isotopes are more abundant, more abundant than these ones. Therefore, the average will be tilted towards the side of this one, indium 115 and rhenium 187. But in all other cases, the radioactive isotopes are present in small quantities. So as we shall see just after a bit, that the average atomic mass will be close to the isotopic mass of the most abundant isotope. For example, vanadium 51 is the most abundant, but 50 is radioactive, is very less abundant. So it will not contribute to the average to any detectable extent. We shall see this later. So to sum up, these 19 elements, they have their isotopic masses. So also this is not really 9, it is maybe 8.9879. These are all really not whole numbers. They are fractions, either 9.0 something or 8.9 something. But we round off to the whole number to give you the number of nucleons or the mass number. So these are the mass numbers of the isotopes. Beryllium doesn't have any other isotope than 9 isotope. I mean, naturally occurring, stable. I'm not talking of synthetic isotopes. Okay. So and we talk about the polyisotopic elements, those elements which exist in more than one stable isotopes, and their relative abundance in nature. I really wonder, is also discriminatory. Sometimes you blame on your dad or mom or your grandparents that you are a little biased to my sister, not me. You love my brother more than me. So the discrimination, you complain sometimes in your family or in every sphere, some talk about discrimination that go on. So nature also discriminates. You see, nature has created 2 isotopes of chlorine. Whenever you analyze chlorine gas, in whichever method you prepare, you will get two types of chlorine. One chlorine having mass number 35, but actual isotopic mass is not 35. It is 34.96885, right? And the other 37, actually it's not 37, it is 36.96590. These are experimentally determined. We will know how, don't worry at all. U means the unified atomic mass unit, U. Earlier we were writing AMU, atomic mass unit, but it is simply U. So, nature has created two types of chlorine, one 35 having 18 protons and the other 18 neutrons and other having 20 neutrons. There are two varieties of chlorine. The atomic numbers are same. They are same elements, same properties, but they are different. Tommies. Tommies means I'm talking about their nuclei. Nuclei are different. This is a more bulky nuclei containing two more neutrons, and the abundance, the relative abundance, the proportion in nature is 3:1. In every 4 chlorine atoms, 3 will be 35 type and 1 will be 37 type. But see the fate of the elder sister bromine. They are all halogens. Bromine has also 2 stable isotopes, 79 and 81. But the nature has stamped on its birth. Whenever bromine will take birth, it will be in the ratio 1:1. See the mystery of nature. To unravel this, nobody can do that. The mystery. Because in chlorine it is a 3:1 ratio, and in bromine it is 1:1 ratio, but the actual value of isotopic masses is neither 79 nor 81. It is something like this. 78.9 something something something. This is 80.9 something something. We round off to the whole number to get the mass number as well as the same atomic mass, easy to remember and for calculation. But for such polyisotopic elements, we never use the absolute isotopic masses for calculation purpose. We take an average value. What kind of average? It is the weighted average. The average will be closer to the isotope which has a greater relative abundance. That means the average atomic mass that we'll be using for calculation will be closer to the isotopic mass of the most abundant isotope. For example, if you want to calculate average atomic mass for polyisotopic elements to be used for chemical calculation, see the irony. The halogen family has 4 sisters, fluorine and iodine. They are monoisotopic. We saw that. Do you remember? We saw that. Iodine and fluorine, the youngest sister and the eldest sister, they are monoisotopic. But the middle 2, chlorine, bromine, they exist in 2 stable isotopes. But for these 19 monoisotopic elements, there is no question of any average. The isotopic mass, it can be called atomic mass. No average term will be used for this because they are unique. No other isotope. But for others, average atomic mass is often called atomic mass. Whenever we say atomic mass of chlorine is 35.5, we use them for calculation. It is not the actual isotopic atomic mass of any chlorine. One type of chlorine is 35, at least you have the authority to say 35, Instead of saying 34.98231, it's difficult to remember. You can say 35. Understand the concept. You can say. And the other one is 37. No one is 35.5. But the average is 35.5. Why? Because it is a weighted average of all the isotopes taking, so taking their natural abundance into account. For example, there are n number of isotopes. So the percentage of one, have a look. Where is my highlighter? That is needed to highlight. Let me use this pen. Yes. The percentage of one isotope into its relative abundance. Its relative abundance. Its relative abundance. I don't remember what for I have written IM. Maybe something. And the, isotopic atomic mass. I'm so sorry. And this should go. Yes, going. Yes, I'm so sorry. I understood now. Right? So this is the percentage abundance, say 75% into the isotopic mass, the absolute isotopic mass of the first isotope. The percentage abundance of the second isotope into the isotopic mass of the second isotope, and so on, divided by 100. If you are taking in the form of percentage, if not in the form of simple ratio, say for example chlorine 3 into 35 plus 1 into 37 by 3 plus 1, 4. If it is in percentage, then the total of all the percentages is 100. Now see, atomic mass of chlorine. Why it is 35.5? It's because the relative abundance of 35 and 37 is 3:1. So the average should be closer to the 35 isotope, not 37, because there is 3 times more of 35 isotope compared to 37. So this is called weighted average. 3 into 35 plus 1 into 37 by 3 plus 1. So that is coming 35.45, and we round off again for simplicity 35.5. U is the atomic mass of chlorine. Which atomic mass? That is an average atomic mass. And we never use the word average. We say atomic mass of chlorine is 35.5. But mind you, this is average. We have to use in our chemical calculation. We cannot use both. Similarly, you can also do the same thing in terms of percentage. For example, 3:1 is nothing but 75 is to 25. So 75 into 35, 25 into 37 divided by 100, same. In fact, this should be 34.9 something. This should be 36.9 something. But no use. You will be, spending so much of time in calculation, but of no significant or any detectable change in the answer. So it is always advisable to write their mass numbers, which are very, very close to their actual isotopic masses. I hope you understand. So without spending more time, similarly, for bromine, its elder sister, 79, because the ratio is 1:1, means 50-50. 79 into 50. 81 into 50 by 100. It's coming exactly the midpoint. Exactly the number average. It is because it is 1:1. Right? So if you by chance talk with bromine or chlorine, by chance, in a hypothetical case, if you just loudly call Mr. Bromine 80, would you please come here? Bromine 80, will you please come here? So no bromine will salute you or say, yes sir, I'm here. There is no bromine 80. Either there is 79 bromine and 81 bromine in equal amounts. Similarly, if you talk with chlorine gas, somehow you have this spectacular power to talk with chlorine atoms. If you address chlorine 35.5, are you here? Please come and play cricket with me. So no chlorine 35.5 will say, yes sir. There is no 35.5, only 35 and 37, right? But we are using the average values for our calculation purpose, right? So, and you see these cases, the most abundant isotope is almost exclusive in proportion. For example, oxygen has 3 stable isotopes, 16, 17, 18. And the 17 and 18 isotopes are almost insignificant, but they have to be considered. So we have to express in terms of percentage. 99.78, 0.02 and 0.2. So this is the abundance ratio. And the actual isotopic masses of 16 is not 16. It is this, 15.99491 according to carbon standard. And 17 is 16.9991. And 18 is 17.9991. So they are different, but very close to the nearest whole number. So atomic mass, mass number and isotopic mass, they can be interchangeably used, but the concepts are different. Atomic mass, isotopic mass is a real determination, experimental determination. How many times one atom of an isotope, one atom of an isotope, one isotopic atom is heavier than 1/12 part of a carbon 12 atom, right? Similarly, carbon has 3 isotopes, natural isotopes, out of which this one is radioactive and is present in trace quantities, 10 to the power -7%. So we never take this for calculation because it is almost extinct. Almost. It's not that it is not there. Carbon 14 is there and it is taking part in photosynthesis. Plant's body also contains carbon 14 to a very, very small extent. Trace. And you will know that carbon 14, radioactive carbon 14, is the key to determine the age of an old wooden sample obtained from an excavation. So let us forget about radioactivity now, focusing on the ratio between these 3, 12, 13 and 14. 13 and 12, they are stable and this is radioactive. The ratio is 98.9, 1.1 and 14 is trace. Similarly, hydrogen, and I forgot to ask you, if you are asked to find the average atomic mass of oxygen, you will definitely write in a ceremonious way 99.78 into 16, 0.02 into 17, 0.2 into 18 divided by 100. So you will do this formality. But what will be the result? Result is nearly 16 because the 16 isotope is present more than 90%. If that is the case, then the average will be very, very close to the isotopic mass of the most abundant isotope, that is oxygen 16. So you can calculate. It may be 16.001, like that. So it is nearly same as 16. So intuitively, you will not be interested to calculate. But if somebody asks you, you can write down the equation 99.78 into 16. And 0.02 into 17, 0.2 into 18 divided by 100. Same thing you can do for carbon and also for hydrogen. Hydrogen has also three isotopes, out of which tritium is radioactive and it is in trace quantities in nature. It is almost extinct. We prepare tritium for our nuclear activity process, fusion process. You will know later how tritium is synthesized for nuclear fusion reaction later. Now, the ratio between these protium and deuterium is 99.9885 to 0.0115. Now see, it is a small quantity, right? So their actual isotopic masses, hydrogen is C. I have taken the data from a literature which gives the value correct up to several places of decimal. In fact, all isotopes have their isotopic masses correct up to several places of decimal. We'll know how we determine the atomic mass. Don't worry at all. Now, similarly, deuterium is 2.01410. Tritium, which is radioactive, 3.016, and these values are experimentally determined. As you can definitely say that deuterium has 1 neutron and tritium has 2 neutrons, right? And hydrogen has no neutron. And all of them have 1 proton because the element is same, hydrogen. We write T, but I prefer not to write D and T. Even for deuterium, H12. And for tritium, it is 1, 3. So if you give different symbol, it will mean something, it will confuse as if there are 3 different elements. It's not like that. Now, similarly, sulfur has 2 stable isotopes, 32 and 34. In the ratio 95.6 is to 4 is to 4. And actually, unnecessarily we will not discuss that. The actual isotopic mass cannot be 32. It will be 31.9 something. 34, 33.9 something, right? Sulfur has 2 more stable isotopes. These are, the percentages are measurable. This is the most abundant isotope and this is the least abundant isotope. But others are insignificant, negligible abundance, so I have not taken those 2 into consideration. I have neglected them in my calculation, and also the percentages are very, very less. But it has 4 stable isotopes. So we only take 32 into 95.6, 34 into 4.4 divided by 100, it will come very close to 32, maybe 32.0 something, so we can round up to 32. So whenever you find the most abundant isotope exceeds 90% and others remain below 10%, then obviously the average atomic mass will be close to the isotopic mass of the most abundant isotope. Do you know one thing? In the entire periodic table, out of the excepting the 19 elements which are monoisotopic, from the remaining ones, tin has the highest number of stable isotopes. Tin has 10 isotopes. So it's very funny to say tin 10. Tin 10. Tin has 10 isotopes, stable isotopes, right? And xenon is the next highest. I have prepared a table for you. You can print out. You may not get it in many sources, so you can print out. This is a table, 3 pages you can find. I have arranged all these table elements up to 83 and their corresponding atomic numbers, Z values, and their corresponding number of stable isotopes, about which we were discussing. And additionally, I have given the number of unstable or radioactive isotopes. Natural, but radioactive. So this third column is not necessary for you. But this second column, the number of stable isotopes, I have given for all naturally occurring elements up to 83. Now see, the 19, iodine comes under 19, one isotope. Gold comes under 19, one. Arsenic comes under 19, one. So beryllium, bismuth, 1. So these are 1. And cesium, 1. We have seen. Just let us now verify. Cesium is there. Cesium is there. Cesium is there, and arsenic is there. But bismuth, bismuth. Bismuth, I have given 1, but there are 3 radioactive isotopes. So that is the reason why it is not there. But let's do one thing. Since we are sharing our screen, I would like to just tell you everything is available. Bismuth will depend on the Wikipedia. That is bismuth isotope only one. Yes, only one, which is 209. That decays 83 protons. Bismuth has long. And in some other these things, isotopes of bismuth, bismuth has 41. Bismuth has 41 known isotopes, but has no stable isotopes. But does have one very long-lived isotope, that is 209. Although bismuth 209 is not known to be unstable, is now known to be unstable. Bismuth 209 is now known to be unstable. It has classically been considered to be stable. So yes, 1. We are correct. Let us come back to our program. Bismuth also we will include bismuth. So it becomes 20. So I discovered while teaching you here in this program that bismuth has also one stable isotope. So, but there are many unstable isotopes. We are not bothering about unstable. So let us include bismuth, and you will find all of them. One again, manganese. I have put it in iodine. I have put it in my list. Indium. I have probably not put it. So it will be additionally, if indium is not there, stable isotopes I have written. Indium is not there. So we again expand the list, taking indium as one isotope, and this bismuth is there. Bismuth we have just now given. Indium and manganese, sodium is there, niobium is there. You just see niobium is there. Yes. So indium and bismuth we added now, and fluorine is there, and holmium is there, right? Indium, rhenium, rhodium, rubidium, they are also there. Rhenium, rhodium, rhenium is not there. So there are many more to be added up. Don't worry, those 19 are the common ones, and terbium is there in my list. So I will add. Scandium is there. But rhenium is not there. Ruthenium 7. So now tin has the maximum number of stable isotopes, 10. And the next is xenon, 9. And the next 8. Is there any 8? 8. Cadmium has 8 stable isotopes. Third highest. Then 7. Molybdenum has 7. 6. Palladium. And 7 also mercury. Bracketed third. Molybdenum and mercury. So this finishes this looking at the table. Then we will solve a problem. Copper has 2 stable isotopes. Copper 63 and copper 65 in the ratio this. Calculate the average atomic mass. Can you not do that? Can you not do that? Precisely. So the average atomic mass, of copper, this is the average atomic mass, is equal to 63 into its corresponding abundance is 69.17 plus 65, I'm sorry, then 65 into its corresponding abundance is 30.83 by 100. So this will not be close to, it will not be exactly even very, very close to the most abundant isotope, because the percentages are quite appreciable. The less abundant isotope has appreciable percentage, 30 point. So it will come in between, but closer to the more abundant isotope. I have already found out the value is coming 63.616. So in the books we write 63.5. For easy calculation, copper atomic mass given in the standard table 63.5. But there is no 63.5 or 63.6 copper. There are 2 copper, one is 63, and in fact it should not be 63, 62.9 something. That we can dare say 63. And the other one is 65, 64.9 something. But the average is 63.6 that we use for calculation. Now the second one. For every 10,000 oxygen atoms that you will count, how many oxygen 16, 17 and 18 isotopes you will find. Now I have told you oxygen 16, oxygen 17, oxygen 18 are in the ratio 99.78 is to 0.02 is to 0.2. So this is in every 100. So for every 100, if this is the situation, then every 10,000, then you multiply by 100. All will be 100 times more, because 100 into 100 is 10,000. So this will be 9978. This will be 2. This will be 20. So if you add them, it will be 10,000. So every 10,000 oxygen atoms you count, you will find 9,978. 9,978 16 isotopes, only 2 17 isotopes and 20 18 isotopes. You got a feeling of the isotopes and their applications, and not applications, how to find average atomic mass. Now let's see how atomic mass can be determined. How atomic mass can be determined. Now let's see how many minutes gone. For that we have to 41 minutes. Okay. Don't worry. Atomic masses were determined in a very, very primitive manner in olden times, and that only was giving the average atomic mass. For all maximum number of polyisotopic elements, we were getting the average atomic mass, and that too they were successful for solid elements. right? So these are the two methods, those are used to determine the atomic mass, average atomic mass. Those are not in practice now. They are not in vogue. They have been abandoned. But still, for historical significance, let us talk how Dulong and Petit's law was used for solid, particularly metallic elements to determine the atomic mass. And the other one was the law of isomorphism. Law of isomorphism. So we'll be doing that. Dulong and Petit's law is very, very primitive, and I think we have to highlighter will not work. Dulong and Petit's law is a very primitive law. Now it says the specific heat capacity of a solid metallic element multiplied by its atomic mass is approximately equal to 6 calories per Kelvin per mole, because specific heat is calories per Kelvin per mole and atomic mass is a pure number, so this will be also calories per Kelvin per mole, right? Because per mole is because it is for 1 mole atomic mass, as we will know that a gram atomic mass is nothing but 1 mole of the atoms containing Avogadro's number of atoms. So we'll be doing that, revising that. So is specific heat is for 1 gram, but if you multiply by atomic mass, then it will become this heat capacity, not specific, heat capacity for 1 mole. This molar heat capacity that we call molar heat capacity of solid element is approximately equal to 3R. You know what is R? The universal gas constant R. So R in calories is nearly 2. So 3 into 2, 6. So the product of specific heat capacity per gram basis into atomic mass, that means it becomes molar heat capacity, is approximately equal to 6 calories. But if you convert it to joule, it will be 25, because 6 multiplied by 4.18, it will be nearly 25, right? So then how to use the Dulong and Petit's law? It's very, very simple. The approximate atomic mass is known from this law. Just 6 divided by specific heat capacity of the solid. That will give you the approximate atomic mass, right? So and you have to know another thing which we will not discuss in this program, that is called equivalent mass. The equivalent mass is correctly determined by experiment. The equivalent mass of a metal or any element can be correctly determined from experiment, and equivalent mass, just I tell you for the sake of telling, not the concept, that equivalent mass is nothing but atomic mass by its valency. Just you remember in a mechanical manner you remember. Its concept we will be doing later. So equivalent mass of an element is its atomic mass divided by valency, right? So once the equivalent mass data will be given to you, then you do the opposite, atomic mass by equivalent mass. That will give you the approximate valency, say 1.98. But you know valency is always a whole number. It is the number of electrons lost or gained. It has to be a whole number. So you round off the approximate valency to the nearest whole number. That will be the exact valency. Once you get the exact valency, you multiply with the equivalent mass, which is always correct, to give you the correct atomic mass. See this example. See this example. Oh, sorry. See this example. A metallic element has specific heat capacity 0.11 calories per Kelvin per gram. Because specific means per gram. Its equivalent mass was determined experimentally to be exactly 27.92. We will not discuss about how equivalent mass is determined experimentally. I am giving you the data. Later on in our equivalent mass program, you will know. Calculate the exact atomic mass of the element. Now, let us apply the Dulong and Petit's law. You know, these things are absolutely not being discussed in any textbooks. They are being discarded. And even it's not coming in the examination. So, just for the sake of historical significance, I am telling. So, specific heat capacity into atomic mass is approximately equal to 6 calories. So, since a specific heat is given, so 6 divided by specific heat, it is the approximate atomic mass. Because this is approximate means this is approximate. An equivalent mass is given, which is atomic mass by valency. So, what is approximate atomic mass? Because approximate atomic mass is this, so we put this, so valency has to be approximate because one of them is approximate. Even if equivalent mass is correct, so valency has to be approximate. So approximate valency is equal to atomic mass 54.54 divided by equivalent mass, which is given 27.92. So that is coming 1.9536. And if you round off to the nearest whole number, it is 2. So actual valency is 2, and then you multiply it with the equivalent mass to give you the correct atomic mass. The correct atomic mass. The correct atomic mass. Now see what's the difference, you know. Here it is 55.84 is the correct atomic mass, but the approximate atomic mass was 54.54 just by using the Dulong and Petit's law. So two things are required here. One, the Dulong and Petit's law, which gives you the approximate atomic mass. And the other, the exact knowledge of its equivalent mass from an experiment. And then you can be able to find the exact atomic mass, right? And that too, it is average, right? It is average because if most of the elements exist in more than one isotope, it has to be average. But we will study, yes, another law which was very obsolete is now called, it was called law of isomorphism. It was propounded by Mr. Lick. And that law says that isomorphous substances possess similar chemical constitution, that is formula, and that is their molecules contain same number of atoms which are similarly arranged. For example, green vitriol, which is ferrosulfate .7 water, is isomorphous with white vitriol, which is ZnSO4.7 water. So accepting Fe and Zn, all are identical. Their molecular formula are identical. Their crystal structures are identical. So they are called isomorphous salts. So this is called law of isomorphism, that isomorphous substances have identical chemical constitution, chemical formula. So from the known, for example, KCl is isomorphous with rubidium chloride. Similarly, alums, potash alum is isomorphous with chrome alum. So, you know, whether a compound has a water of crystallization or not doesn't matter. But isomorphous substances have similar formula, KCl and RBCl. They are binary, contains 2 elements, 2 atoms, and their crystal structures are identical. From the known data about 2 isomorphous solids, the atomic mass of an unknown element can be determined. Just have a look I will solve a problem in your presence. Now, of course, this comes under chemical calculation, stoichiometry, which we have not yet studied, but this is very simple, you can understand. Potassium sulfate is isomorphous with potassium chromate. That means the question tells you that potassium sulfate formula is this. Therefore, the potassium chromate formula has to be this, not anything, not like K2Cr2O4, not K2Cr2O7, no. Potassium sulfate formula this means potassium chromate formula has to be this, right? Because in the constitution, the number of atoms, the formula are exactly identical. The only difference here is sulfur, here is chromium. And it asks to find the atomic mass of chromium from the data that potassium chromate contains 26.79% by mass by mass of chromium. The only data given about potassium chromate is the mass analysis data. For every 100 gram of potassium chromate, 26.9 gram of chromium is present. That is the only data given. Once we knew the formula, you know, potassium sulfate has no role, chemical calculation role to play. It only indicates the formula of potassium chromate is this. Then no more requirement, right? Then it is very simple. Let us find out the molecular mass. Supposing chromium has an atomic mass of X. So in terms of X, how much? So potassium is 39. 39 into 2 is 78. Plus X, chromium is X. Plus 16 fours are 64. So it is coming I have done calculation, it is coming 142. 142 plus X. So, if 1 gram molecular mass, that is 142 plus X gram of potassium chromate contains 1 gram atomic mass of chromium, that is X gram of chromium. We don't know the atomic mass. And let us write 142 plus X gram, that is the gram molecular mass of potassium chromate of K2CrO4 contains X gram of chromium. Because there is only one atom, so in 1 gram molecular mass, there is 1 gram atomic mass. So 100 gram of potassium chromate contains X divided by 142 plus X into 100. That is the percentage of chromium present in the compound. And that is given to be equal to 26.79. You see the data. So the percentage of chromium in potassium chromate is given. It is already experimentally determined, 26.79. So if you calculate this, the unknown X is coming 51.96, and that is the atomic mass of chromium. And we use 52 in our chemical calculation. It is 52. And there might be some experimental error, this mass percentage, the person who has determined, taking the actual experiment, decomposing potassium chromate in some reaction, getting chromium only, and then comparing the mass. So that might have some experimental error. So whatever value we get is very close to the actual value, and therefore we have to rely on that. If it is widely different, then definitely the data is wrong. The experimental data is wrong. I think we have to close this session. Then we have another session on this atomic mass and molecular mass. This is already more than 1 hour. The other aspect, the modern method of getting atomic mass is very, very interesting, where you can get isotopic mass, individual isotopic mass with absolute accuracy. That is called mass spectrometry. So I will be taking a break. You also take a break, and I will make it the next lecture, because this is growing a little longer. Until that time, bye bye. It is 57 minutes, so I will take a bit of rest and come back again. Bye.